reserved for you. There are things your family is going to need that he has put aside strictly for you, and it's already been paid for. But if you don't have a clear sense of identity, you won't have access to it. We put this panel together tonight to have a discussion for our black brothers who have families, businesses, generational wealth, peace, power, access, and salvation stored up for them, but they have yet to access it because it's not clear to our own selves who we are. Dear black man, who are you? Let's talk about it. How y'all doing tonight? We want to welcome everybody to the Dear Black Man, Who Are You? Panel discussion, sponsored by Iron Sharpens Iron, Men's Empowerment Group, as well as the Black Heritage Festival. We're going to start off by letting you guys see who's going to be having this conversation tonight, and start with our panel, starting from my left.
Braylon Harris, pastor, Mount Olive Baptist Church.
Keith Bell, assistant pastor at United Christian Fellowship Church.
Jeffrey Jackson, Living Word Christian Center.
And I'm Donald Thomas, the director of the Black Heritage Festival and owner of Southern Touch Entertainment. Now, when these guys introduced themselves, they gave you their titles. They're pastors and ministers. But when I invited them to be on this panel, I told them I wasn't inviting Pastor Harris, Reverend Bell, or Minister Jackson. I was inviting Braylon, Keith, and Jeff because we want to have an honest and transparent conversation. There are some things, no matter how true, even speaking from a pulpit, you can say, but you have to say it in a certain way. Today, this ain't no pulpit. We're going to be honest, we're going to be transparent, we're going to be real, and we're going to get to the bottom of some things and have a good conversation. So first off, first question. Dear black man, what makes you a man?
Oh, wow. I got time on this one? No.
So let's make it easy on you. In one word, what defines you as a man?
So for me, it's faith. For me, it's faith, if I have one word.
Okay, elaborate on that.
So to me, it's believe. First, you have to believe that you are a man. You have to believe that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. You have to believe that God has placed certain things in you as a unique entity, as a unique person. And so to me, to be a man, you first have to have faith that God has created you for the position and for the purpose that he created you. So for me, faith.
Okay. Keith.
For me, transcendent. And what I mean by that is, as a black man, I feel we've always had to go above and beyond what is ordinary. And throughout time, we've always had to redefine ourselves. We have one door that's open, and we have to be willing to adapt to get through that door. And if that door closes, we have to keep adapting. So for me, just any man really, we have to be transcendent, willing and able to go above and beyond the normal.
Okay. Jeff?
For me, leadership. When I say leadership, I mean, when God created us as men, he created us to lead, not to follow. And so, I mean, that you can take that all the way back to the garden. We were created to lead and not to follow. That's what I believe makes me a man.
Okay. Now, for me, my one word would be responsibility. For me as a man, I look at my wife, I look at my kids, I look at my family, I look at my grandkids, and I feel that everybody who's within my reach and my covering, I'm responsible for. Whether it be financially responsible for them, whether it be to protect them, like responsibility is what defines me. So as a man, for me, I just feel like responsibility is what defines me, because I cannot, there's nothing or no one in my circle that I can look at and not feel accountable for. Now, Brother Keith, you kind of touched on this ahead of time, so I'm going to piggyback on something you said. Now, we say what defines us as a man. If you put the adjective black in front of it, how does that change what you just said?
Well, again, it just to reiterate, for me, as a black man, we've been called to, again, adapt to an ever-changing playing field.
Right.
When we've mastered or even come close to mastering that playing field, the playing field changes.
Right.
So we have always been, or those that have been successful have always been able to navigate those changing playing fields. So as a black man, it becomes difficult for us sometimes. It can become frustrating sometimes. But within us, we do have that ability to go above and beyond everything which is thrown right in front of us.
Now, Jeff, you said leadership. Does being a black man make it more difficult to be a leader?
No, because I believe that leadership has been instilled in us from the beginning.
Okay.
I mean, you can look at it all the way from the garden. You can look at it all the way from the book of Genesis. I believe we've been called to lead. Regardless of how much you try to keep us down as black men, we always seem to rise. We're trendsetters.
Now, let me ask you a little deeper question. So, as a leader of your own people, with the stuff that we've been through, the stuff that we go through, the stuff that we deal with, do you find it more difficult to lead in the capacity of leading your own people?
Well, I'm not going to say it's more difficult to lead my own people. I believe that, in a lot of situations, this society has tried to put us in situations where it makes it a little difficult for us to lead, period.
Okay. Now, Braylon, your word was faith. So as a black man, is your faith different than as comparison to someone from a different race?
Yeah, I think anytime you have a culture, anytime you have an upbringing, anytime you have a unique set of circumstances and a unique experience with God, then it's going to create a uniqueness to your faith. It's going to put a different fingerprint on your faith. Now, we know that faith comes by hearing by the word of God. And as we hear the word of God and we study the word of God, we develop this faith. But also our faith is customized by our experiences many times. That when we've gone through certain trials, our faith goes to another level. And so we do understand that also has and plays a role in it. And when you put black in front of faith, then you have to reach back and not only, as Brother Jeff said, grab Genesis and pull that all the way through. You also have to grab the black experience and weave that into that experience. And so I do believe there's a uniqueness. There's a culturing of faith, particularly for a black man, that is unique because of the experiences that we've had. And so I also believe that helps our faith to be deeper, right? When we're talking about the things that particularly black men have dealt with in their experience, particularly a black American man.
Come on.
I think that if you add that to it, you got a whole nother situation on your hands.
Tell that truth.
And then that adds another component of faith. When we talk about whether it was going all the way back to slavery, and what kind of faith did it take to develop, to be a black man in slavery and not lose your mind, and and then coming up through the civil rights movement. What kind of faith does it take to endure that, to lead, as we've said, to transcend? There's a faith that it took to get through that. And then again, even today, the various challenges that we have as we lead, as we transcend, there has to be a uniqueness, a culturing of our faith that allows us to come up against those various obstacles that we face and see that greater is he that's in me than he that's in the world. I think it's different when greater is he that's in me than he that's in the world. When you see the world at its worst towards black men, world at its worst towards African American black men in many times. So that means if I see what the world has at a greater aspect, but I'm holding the faith that greater is he who's in me, than the opposition I face. The greater the opposition I face, the bigger the God that's in me.
Come on, come on.
Can I add something?
Yes, sir.
To the question. I think that when we're asking what makes a man, I think for each and every person here, that definition will be fluid. That definition will mean something to different people because we also lead in different aspects and in different ways. And I think that for us as black men, when we begin to understand our role and our position in society and the power of our role and our position in society, and that every man is valuable and every man is powerful, it allows us to lead in the setting that we're currently in. It may be in our family, it may be in our church, it may be on our jobs, but I don't have to lead like Jeff has to lead. My faith doesn't have to look like Pastor Braylon's. My responsibilities don't look like yours. So we have to, I think, sometimes get away from the narrative that we all are the same person and we have to do things the same way, but have that freedom to understand who we are through faith, especially, and grow and learn more about those positions that we find ourselves in. And I think that would help us not only to be leaders, but also to be better followers. Because sometimes it's hard to lead somebody who doesn't want to be led.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So I think it's just different for everybody.
Right. Now,
Go
ahead.
I just want to add one thing to that. When you asked me about leading our people, one thing I can say about leading our people, it's easier to lead our people when they can understand the vision.
Right.
It makes it way more
Agreed.
difficult to lead them when it's very difficult to get them to see the vision. I think that's one of the areas that we're fighting and we're dealing with in today's society. Getting our people to see the vision. It's so many generational curses, so many things that have happened back in the beginning with our forefathers that were brought here. I think that we're still dealing with today. I think we're still dealing with a lot of that today.
Right. And I agree. And a part of the reason we had this conversation about knowing who we are, because if you don't know who you are, you don't know who you can be. And that's what vision is, knowing who you can be. And when you don't see it for yourself, I can't see your vision if I don't see it for myself. Now, something you said, Brother Keith, you said about it's different for everybody. So I want to ask a couple of guys in the audience. You can go to the microphone here. Give me that one word that defines you as a man. Anybody? Don't be scared, guys. Brad. Give me a word that defines you as a man.
I would say discipline.
Good. That's a good one. Discipline. That's a good one. Now, why you say discipline, B?
Because if you take everything they said, it takes discipline to maintain all those things.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean,
That's
you,
good.
You can't build your faith if you're not disciplined, going to the house of the Lord, praying. You can't lead nobody if you're not disciplined, because whether you're on the job or wherever you're at, you got to be there, which takes discipline. So I think discipline is huge as a man.
That's good, B. That's good. I like that. And now, so speaking of discipline, right? And we had a conversation earlier off camera. We was talking about how emotional men are. And typically, so let's go to the biological definition of what a man is, right? Men are supposed to be rational. Men are supposed to be masculine, right? Now, so I'm going to ask a question, and we're going to be honest. Do you think men today have lost some sense of masculinity?
Anybody?
It's on you, brother. It's on you.
I say no. I say that there's a projection, there's an image that's being displayed or a magnification of those that, based on the world's definition of what is masculine, I think that visualization is pushed in the forefront. But I look at all these brothers that's out here just today, and they all look masculine to me. So I think that narrative sometimes is being pushed too far to, again, degrade what a black man is or just what a man is that a man's masculinity has to fit within this certain box. Right. And I don't think that's fair to do that. Now, if we say, are men more effeminate, then I still would say no, because we all know some guys that are effeminate, but we know way more guys that are not. Right. So I think the question is, I don't believe that men have lost their masculinity.
Brett?
Yeah, no, I would agree with Pastor Keith, and I think it's great to be able to say there's a difference between reality and media. Right. And we cannot allow media to project, to create a false reality and create a false narrative. I agree with Pastor Keith. I have the wonderful opportunity to lead the mighty men of the nest. And, brother, I got a whole bunch of brothers that are very masculine, quote, unquote. You know, again, we've got to define that. And it goes back to what Pastor Keith said earlier as well, is this idea that there's some kind of monolith, that everyone's going to be the same, that it's going to look the same for everybody, feel the same, define the same. That's not the reality. I think we, particularly as men, as well as particularly as black men, the idea that allowing the idea to continue to be pushed and said that there's somehow we're all the same. Right. You know, the reality to it is men are just as diverse as any other, as women, right? Black men are just as diverse as any other kind of men, right? And so the idea that there's some kind of monolithic brother, you know what I mean?
Right,
that if you don't fit in this box, we're gonna take your bro card, or we're gonna take your black card, or whatever the case may be. We've got to be careful with that, because a lot of times who I am needs to be defined by who God created me to be, not how you define me.
Correct. Correct.
And so I think, again, I don't believe there's a projection of lost masculinity. I think there is an agenda to suggest that there's
Agreed.
a loss of masculinity. But is there a real loss of masculinity? I don't think so. I think there's also not just a loss of, we're at a risk of losing masculinity, but we're at a risk also of falsely defining masculinity, where men are overtly masculine, you know, where they believe masculine is how big your muscles are, how loud you are. So I think we're also losing the definition of it. And so we're warring on both sides. We're warring on losing masculinity. We're warring over on this side of having this false sense of masculinity instead of this assurance of masculinity that I believe comes from God.
And that was one of the reasons I named this, Dear Black Man, Who Are You, right? Not who the internet says you are, not who the people who look to destroy you say you are, but like really, who are you? Like those narratives, especially with social media or just the internet in general, it pushes so many narratives so often that it's hard to figure out who you are if you're looking at that stuff. That's why knowing who you are comes internally. But that's why opportunities like this to push the positive narratives and the educated narratives are important, because we control our own narratives. We want to tell our own stories. And so you can go watch a whole bunch of stuff on TV right now that'll tell you something different, but we're telling you something solid, something I believe to be solid.
And just to add to that, if we define masculinity as we have today, someone who has faith, strong faith, someone who has the ability to transcend, the ability to lead, the ability to be responsible, the ability to be disciplined. I mean, there are more brothers that have those characteristics and abilities than there are other brothers. We will, you know, we talk about, just as an example, even the negative, the brothers that are let's just say in jail or caught up in drugs. We like to talk about those numbers, but when we talk about how many brothers are in jail versus how many brothers there are in America,
come on,
we don't like to make that comparison. We want to talk about how many brothers in jail versus how many brothers in college, or how many brothers in jail versus how many brothers with this degree or that degree. Talk about how many brothers are in jail versus how many brothers are in America going to work every day. How many brothers are getting up and going to jobs and taking care of their families and supporting their families. There are a lot of strong brothers that are great examples here. But again, those are not, listen, you know, strong brothers ain't on social media talking about, look at me, I'm going to work today. They just going to work.
No.
You know what I mean? So they ain't got 5,000 views. Go with me to work today. I'm walking in Sassaw. You know, that's not what brothers. That's not what brothers doing. You know, and so when you look at the brothers that's on, Facebook and they got the wig on and the muumuu on doing the skit. It's 10,000 other brothers that's got boots on and Nomex going to work, but they just not.
Trust me. Yeah, I know.
You know what I'm saying? They just not recording it every day because that's not the thing that get the 10,000 views. Also, as brothers, I think we have to be careful what we click on and what we watch, because we're perpetuating that definition by what we feed into and what we watch. And here also, brother, what we talk about. If you see something that's going left, brother, just move. Don't even click. Don't watch. Don't even discuss it, and let that thing die on the vine rather than bringing it into the central form and make it the point of the conversation.
Right. Totally agree. Jeff, anything to add to that?
No, I agree totally. I don't think there's a loss of masculinity in the black men. And black men, absolutely not. Society tries to paint this picture of this false narrative, and especially like you said on social media, the internet, to make society believe that that's possible. That's the case. That's not the case. Like Pastor said, we have to be careful what we watch. We got to be careful what we're listening to, because you got to realize, see, people believe more of what they see versus what they hear. And so we have to be careful what we're watching with our eye gate. I call the eyes the eye gate. We have to be careful what goes in. Whatever you watch goes in internally. Whatever you hear goes in internally. Whatever you speak into the universe will show up in your life. So we got to be careful with that. But that's just the picture that they're trying to paint.
Even the joking
Even
manner.
jokingly. You got to be careful what you say, even jokingly.
Once you put stuff in the atmosphere, it's there.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Trust
looking
me,
to
it'll show
succeed.
up. You say it enough, it'll show up.
I want to add this, that also what you didn't hear in that definition of manhood, one word, I don't know if not only was it not said, I don't think any person in here would have used the one word popular. Right? But we're allowing media to make the definition of a man as somebody that's popular. But not one person in this room would have said what defines a man is popularity.
Right.
Never, nobody. But we're allowing media to suggest to our young boys that somehow being a man is being popular. And oh, by the way you're popular is behaving femininely, right? But no one would have said, everyone in here could have gave 10 words of what defines a man, and I guarantee you, in this room tonight, no one would have put popular. No one would have put, most friends on Facebook, most followers on. No one would have put that as a defining characteristic. And I think that's one of the things that we have to wage war against, is that manhood, very, very frankly, many times manhood is unpopular.
Right.
Now I want to add this, throw a little kink in it. I do believe that we have some toxic masculinity.
That's right. Yeah, that other side.
That other side. And I think it stems from the reversal of what you were saying as far as going towards the other spectrum. So I have to act a certain way. I have to appear hard. I have to appear emotionless. I have to be guarded at all times because I am a man. I'm hard. I'm difficult. I'm rugged. Nothing affects me. Nothing hurts me. And men, we know we hurt. We know that we got some things that are in our minds and in our hearts, man, that we can't even tell nobody. We just hold on to those things, and it just eats us, and it eats us, and it eats us, and sometimes we explode into things. And if we don't explode, that those inner thoughts, those things that we're holding on to, those inner demons kind of creep out and seep into our marriages, seep into our relationships with our kids, seep into our relationships with other men. Also, we know that most of y'all not my age here, young, that is. I remember when I was 12 years old and didn't grow up with a dad, but my uncles, their definition of masculinity was how many women you slept with.
Right.
My uncles would put a notch on their belt. I know they were lying when I got older, because they son guns had notches all over the place in things. But guess what? When I came up to be a man, that's what I thought.
Right.
That's what I had to do. I had to conquer as many females as I possibly could, and that was no life in that.
Right.
in things. So I do believe that we do have a toxic, sometimes some toxic masculinity traits that we don't discuss often because it makes us look at the reflection of ourselves in the mirror sometimes.
Right. And that toxic masculinity that you're talking about, like we always raised by those uncles and cousins that gave you that bad advice. And I found as I became an adult, I dove into that, and then those things were hindrances and obstacles that I struggled with like for years and years after the fact, trying to undo all that damage I did to myself, self-inflicted wounds. That was a good point. I like that. Now, before we move on to the next question, anybody got anything in the audience they want to add or say? My brother right here.
Yeah, I got a question, man. And I understand everything that we're talking about. But for instance, I grew up, statistically, I shouldn't be here. I'm 62 years old, but I grew up in the projects with a mother who couldn't read or write. I'm not in jail, but statistically, I should be in jail, in prison, or in a graveyard. Today, we got a lot of young black kids that grew up with single parents, which normally is a mother, no father in the home. And then when they grow up to be a man, they get their own child, but then they want to depend on a woman to take care of them because they're used to that mama taking care of them coming up as a young man. So how do we reach them? The ones that don't want to go to church, the ones that's out there in the streets, gang banging. You know what I'm saying? That's their idea of being a man. So how do we reach them?
Okay, so I'll start off first, right? So my example when I said about being a man was responsibility, right? So for me, if that young man that you're describing is out there and I know he's out there, if he's within my reach, like I said, that's my responsibility. If he was within my reach, I feel as a man, it's on me to figure out a way to at least make myself accessible to that man and available to that man and ceding to him what I know, what I've been through. Now, I don't have a perfect plan of how to do that, but like I said, I'm all about responsibility. I can't unsee it. I can't look away from it. So if I come across a young man, whether he's younger or older, that's in that situation, for me, I'm going to offer whatever I have to offer in a loving way. And if he receives it, great. If he don't receive it, I'm going to still be consistent and persistent within reason. But for me, I just say as a responsible man, like this is what iron sharpens irons is. I'm going to offer what I have, what I've been through to that brother. And then, you can't make a horse drink water. You can take him to the pond, but you can't make him drink. But at least I'm available and I'm making myself accessible to that brother.
No, I'll add. I think one of the keys that we have to do is not only do we have to model, but strong, particularly black men, have to begin to unify. Because many times in those situations, what they're looking for is family. What they're looking for is friendship. What they're looking for is acceptance. What they're looking for is love. And what happens a lot of times is strong black, quote unquote, good black men, we isolate it and we become individuals, right? And so they're not seeing the collective. They're not seeing the family. They're not seeing the movement, right, of positive black men. And so, for example, goes back to the media thing. They go to media, they see gang banging, and they see the brother gang banging in the video. They see the brother in the moo-moo in the video. How many videos are there out there of conversations like this one? Right? We have to, the good, solid, strong brothers have to create a movement, right? We understand that people are moved by peer pressure, right? The question is, how strong is the positive peer pressure, right? There was a time where it would, there were so many men, it was so normal to just, brothers get up, go to work, that you felt crazy sitting at home. Because the peer pressure was so strong in the positive direction that, man, you felt crazy not doing it, right? And we've got to create that positive peer pressure. We've got to continue to build that positive peer pressure, and then we've got to continue to promote that positive peer pressure so that brothers say, listen, I can run with this crew, right? You got guys who are leaders, right? But then the reality to it is there are men who are followers. They're great followers, right? And so, but they've got to have a strong leader to be able, but that leader has to be promoted. They want to be a part of a pack. We've got to create those experiences, those packs, those groups, those positive gangs, right? That alternative opportunity to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself and go and make a great impact. So I think we've got to consolidate and coordinate the positive movement of particularly the black men.
But we used to have those positive games back in the day. They were called community. And so, like, I remember, I'll tell you a story. I remember I was at the park, me and my friend was at the park. We was breaking bottle glass on the basketball court, right? One of the local guys in the park, just sitting in the park having a beer, saw me breaking bottle glass. He said, "Little Donald, come here." Slapped me upside my head, told me to go home, right? My dad got home. He walked up to my dad after a long day of work, and he said, "Hey, Mr. Donald, you want to tell you, little Donald was breaking glass on the basketball court. I gave him a couple licks upside his head, and I just want you to know that." My dad called me outside, and he whooped me outside in front of that man. And as an adult, I understand. He showed that guy, hey, we on the same team, right? You did my job for me. I'm co-signing what you did, and we all on the same team. Today, and not to push the negative narrative, but today, if I was to catch a kid doing something wrong and I discipline that kid, I'm going to have the sheriff department, the mama, the auntie, the daddy, whoever else to deal with. And I just think sometimes we got to get back to that old school sense of community where we're holding everybody accountable. When my mom or my dad would go to the school, the teachers knew who they were, the students knew who they were, the principal knew who they were, the bus driver knew who they were, and they knew who those people and kids were. So I think when we talk about the positive gains, we got to get back to having a sense of community.
I think right quick to piggyback on his question. Also, there's on a certain level that we do have those positive gains, and we do have men out there in the community are doing some things. Braylon, if you remember, this was probably prior to COVID, and we had a discussion with a couple other men of God on what can we do to help that particular aspect of the community. And what we were looking at is coaches. We have black men in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and Calcasieu Parish that are pouring in to a bunch of kids. I'm talking about they buying uniforms, they buying concessions, they picking them up, they doing all these things. So we have opportunities to locate those coaches. They playing football, soccer, basketball, t-ball. They're doing all of these things to locate those coaches and say, well, man, what can I do to help them, even if I can't coach? But what can I do just to go support them? I was sitting one day at a high school football game, and I'm not going to say the high school, but they had a young man. He was jumping off sides. He was jumping off sides and jumping off sides. And every time he came to the sideline, the coach jumped on him. The coach just chewed him out, just chewed him out, just chewed him out. And the kid was sitting, he went sit on the bench dejected. But there was just somebody who was not a coach, who the team trusted, and that man came sit by that young man and just talked to him and just poured into him. Not talking about X's and O's, not talking about any of those things. Might have been talking about discipline, might have been talking about some other things. So there's opportunities for us to do these things. We just have to look at it differently, because it is a problem that we have young men that want to sit and lay up on a lady and things, but we also have ladies that are allowing these young men to sit up on them. So I'm a girl's dad, so we also have to be in a position as men to train our daughters not to accept or settle for that type of man. So I think it goes both ways on that.
Now, somebody had a question or comment?
Okay. Yeah, I had a couple things. And I don't want to say anything disrespectful or say anything out of turn, but you said we were talking real. So I totally disagree with all four of y'all, or three of y'all. I don't know what you said, Donald Thomas. But four of y'all with are men still masculine? As a total, I would say yes. But I strongly believe a lot of the men are accepting to become more and more feminine. And young men need a leader. Young men model what they see. when I was growing up, I was with my father 80% of the time. Stop. 80% of the time I was with my father. So he showed me, he guided me. He said, no, this is acceptable. No, that's not acceptable. You can do this. This is okay. No, that's not okay. Men these days don't have the time, or the ones that don't have the time, they either don't have the time, the women are raising the kids, the grandkids are raising. So men are almost absentee parents, not all of them, but the ones that are, we're losing. So they have to have some kind of guidance. They have to have some kind of leadership. So all they got to do is look on TikTok. And if it's a woman wearing a dress, what are they going to do? They're being taught to wear a dress. They're going to take the path of least resistance. If I'm taught to be a man, I know it's hard to be a man. I don't want nothing that's hard. I know it's rough. I know it's tough. I know everything about being a man is difficult. But if I don't have my father there promoting, backing me, et cetera, I am going to take the path of least resistance, and that is what's happening, and that's why most black men, let me take that back. Most black men are staying strong, but a lot of black men are starting to believe that it's okay to be feminine, and nobody is stepping up and saying, no, this is not right. We are, like you said earlier, no community. If other men in a community, other than going to jail and say, hey, look, boy, you shouldn't be wearing that dress. You shouldn't be doing this. This is not okay. This is not okay. Then we won't be able to have so many feminine stuff. But on a percentage-wise, no, we have not lost a lot of men to being feminine, but we're on the way.
Get a comment? In the back?
How you doing? My name is Kevin Johnson. I'm here from California. I've been out here about 2 years, going on 3 years. But I tend to agree with the young man that just got through talking. I'll be 65 this year. My dad, he was in California. He was with a motorcycle club called the East Bay Dragons. And, they're real hardcore, kind of like the Hells Angels. You guys heard of the Hells Angels, right? But anyway, to make a long story short, my dad divorced my mom when I was 12. So I had to learn what it was to be a man through my mom. And that wasn't but I still picked up some stuff from my dad, and that was always be hardcore, and, just try to not show any emotions, don't cry, and this and that. But that's a false sense of what a man really is. And what I've come to realize is that I am now, and what I know about being a man is until we can be transparent with our emotions, feelings, and understanding of how we view life, to me, that's what's really being a man is just, I forgot who said that, I think that was Ray Charles. He said, man, you got to make it do what it do. You got to tell the truth. Anything that lines up with the truth, with the word of God, I think, to me, that's what's being a man.
So guys, so those two comments, those guys said, hey, we are losing masculinity. So let's give you feedback to those comments.
Yeah, I agree that we are in a fight. We are in a battle. I wouldn't take away that we are not in a battle. We're in that fight between, becoming feminine and this toxic masculinity. We're fighting on both fronts. But we also have to be honest about the scoreboard and say we ain't losing, but we in a dog fight now. If we still up, we may be up by 3 points right now, population wise, percentage wise, or whatever the case may be. But do we have a fight on our hands? Absolutely. And does it seem as if again that the team seems to be breaking down? Yes. I think which goes to that next point that we mentioned. We gotta get the team back. Right, we've got to get the community back. We've got to get positive brothers working together, doing it visibly and vocally. Those are things that are essential, right? Because you're right. We do have many absent fathers, right? But let me tell you how. It's probably, I bet half the brothers in here grew up in a home that didn't have a father, but they're a good man, right? Which means that there was some group of men that they were able to see, to able to watch, to able to join, and were still able to get that. Now, I want to say this very quickly because I think it's very important, because I believe this is where, as a pastor, I got to plug the church right here. I believe that's where the church comes in. That's where you can you have a gathering of positive, strong brothers that are trying to do the right thing. Now, the key to it is we've got to become more coordinated. We can't just coordinate with the brothers at our church. We got to go to UCF and do it at the men's breakfast. We got to come over here and be a part of the men's ministry. And we've got to build that coordination of one another. And then we got to tell somebody who got a phone, put it on TV, so now there's a young brother out there looking for that positive role model. They know where to begin to go and we begin to find that. So I agree, we do have a battle on our hands. Social media is running away on both sides, on the toxic as well as the effeminate side. But we do have enough. I'll say this and then I'll stop at this point. There was a time I was sitting in my office and I was thinking about our church and things that were going on, and I didn't have as much as I wanted. It was, not as many men as I wanted, not as many members as I wanted, not as much money as we needed. We wasn't moving as fast as I wanted. And God said, do you have enough? He said, do you have enough? Right. And I had to respond. I said, yeah, I got enough. He said, well, go. Right? And when I think about as far as strong, positive, hardworking, responsible, transcendent, leading, faith-filled, disciplined black brothers, we got enough. It's enough of us. We've got to work together and begin to push it.
It's just as what I can say is the internet has made it more visible. Right. I'm 53. I can remember as a child feminine men. I can remember in my community. Right. But the internet has made it more visible. So I don't believe that we're losing. I believe that it's just more visible now. Because we got a lot of strong black men. I agree with Pastor. If you look at the true numbers, it's a large percentage of us that are strong black men and not feminine. But see, what happens is, what we got to be careful with, is society would try to paint that picture and paint that narrative and make us believe so they can get more of us to go in that direction. But we got to be strong enough to know, guess what? That's not the direction to go in. We got to know this is the way to go. But I don't believe that. I still don't believe that we lose.
Now, we have a comment online.
From Chantel Landry. She has two questions. She says, how do men show their diversity? She says, I've seen the same things in black men I meet. And then she also asked the question about how do you address the sagging pants issue. She says she see it between older men and younger men in terms of speaking of masculinity about the sagging pants.
So one thing I just want to put out there for you guys to comment on, right? So like Kelsey was saying about men, the guys being feminine, right? Or like you're talking about online about the sagging pants. So my question is this: is it our place to address another man based off what we think, our perception? So like if I see a brother sagging his pants in the store, or if I see a guy who in my perception, my one-sided perception, if I think he's being feminine, am I, as a man, a black man, to another black man, is it my place to even say anything? Or do I say anything? How do I say it if I do?
No, I think especially in 2024, we've got to be wise as a serpent and humble as a dove. That's what the Bible says, right? And so we've got to be careful as we approach this. We've got to do the work we can do. I've said it this way many times. You can't do all the good you want to do. You can only do all the good you can.
I agree.
Okay? And so the good that we can do is build that when that young brother are in our community, that there are strong black brothers doing it right. Again, this is going to be a peer pressure thing. We can try to figure this thing out one at a time, and everyone reach one. That sounds all good, but I don't know if we got enough for each one reach one, but we got enough that if we create pressure and get momentum going in the right direction within our community, black working men got more money than black drug slinging men. Can I get an amen right there? But what we're not doing is working it and showing it and putting it together, right? So that it can have, so that can have an image, right? So that they can have an image. I'll shout out Pastor Charlie. I love the idea that he's got this Christian group that is now going to be car show people, right? Because people need to know, and Pastor Barry's out here, he got a pretty nice vehicle himself. And he got a nice classic. But young brothers need to know, man, everybody that got a nice car ain't selling drugs. That is some brothers with some nice cars, man, that go to work every day, and they not only do they have the car, they own the car, and ain't nobody come and get the car after tax season. You understand what I'm saying? And they need to see that, but we've got to begin to promote that. So we got to have those positive car shows, because all they seeing is the brother riding down the street with them, elbows, 48 inches long, about to knock somebody's ankles off. You understand? That's all they're seeing. We've got to begin to have car shows with brothers that's got solid jobs, solid, beautiful cars, solid, so they can say, man, how did you get that? Well, man, I'm a contractor. Right? Hey, man, I started painting cars, where they can see it is not just the lawyers, it's not just the doctors, right? But there's a diversity of ways to do this thing positively and correctly. And you don't necessarily, sometimes you don't correct by what you say, it's correction by what they see. Right? And I think we've got to begin to be more specific and more intentional about how we promote the image, and we do it in collective to create that positive picture.
And what I would say is to the brothers who said, we don't have the masculinity, or we're losing masculinity, like Braylon said, do what you can. Make an impact. You're not going to save a whole generation of people, one person, but if you impact 2, 3, 4 brothers, you're making a difference. So, like, if you think it's a problem, you guys think it's a problem, do what you can.
One of the things that, and I'll let you have it, brother, when we're talking about the what a young man said he doesn't agree, and I accept that. But again, I think it's also the narrative that we see, because we're not able to see every single black man in America. We see the images that are portrayed. Now we can see those that are around us that may exhibit some of those things, and then that gives us an opportunity to, one, we can't walk up on nobody and tell them pull their pants up. We can't walk up on nobody these days and say, man, you too feminine, but we can form a relationship with that individual just by starting a conversation, not about the negative things that you see in them, but just say, hey, find something positive that you can build a relationship with that individual, because we find it more that I know every one of these guys up here personally. Now, if they see me doing something wrong and they come up to me and point it out to me in private, hey, Bell, man, you need to chill, man. It's not a good look. I'm a listen to that. But if a stranger come up to me, or to come up to any of you and say, hey, man, you need to chill what you doing. Fool, who you? Right? It's gonna get mixed up real quick. So we have to be cognizant of the approach we take, and the ability we have to be able to always be building relationships. I think that's one of the things that also that we as men that we don't do well in that community and thing is that we don't build relationships with each other. We build relationships with people that we might have some commonalities with. We see somebody at the gym that we might talk with a little bit, but we don't want to bug the brother. We don't want to go up to the brother anywhere outside of the gym, because what? Man, I don't want that brother to think I'm something wrong with me. I'm just approaching the brother. We eyeball brothers strongly. We eyeball them. We give them a side eye when they coming up on us. But we don't do well with building relationships with each other. And if we don't build relationships, then we don't even know what we have in common. If we don't know what we have in common, we can't address the issues that we have or the strengths that we can combine with each other so that we could tackle any problems that we may see. As far as with the young lady, I don't even know how to answer that question about she's gone out or she's met different guys and there's no diversity. They're the same type guys. I don't
go
really
to different places.
that
would be my answer.
Yeah.
That if you're meeting the same type of person, you're probably going to the same place, because birds of a feather flock together. If you want to meet a different person, you're going to have to go to a different type of place. And sometimes that mean a different city. Sometimes that mean a different location. Sometimes that mean a different side of town. And sometimes it mean a different church. But birds of a feather flock together. And if you in a certain flock, you in a certain field. Want a different flock, go to another field. I'm sorry. We're supposed to be being real, right?
You're right. You're right, Pat. Let me touch on that a second. I'm gonna touch on that. The sag in the pants, which she's experiencing. I believe as black men, we have to be examples in our community. We have to make sure that we're the examples. I mean, I seen a guy probably several months ago. He had to be older than I am. I'm 53. He had to be in his late 50s or 60s, and he was sagging. See, we have to be the example. And so when we become the example, we have to make sure that we do not compromise. I have 3 young men that I've raised. I have 3 sons. They're not perfect. But one thing I've never done, one is 28, one is 17, about to turn 18, a senior in high school, and I have one that's a junior at McNeese, he's 21. I don't compromise. I don't compromise. So guess what? I never had an issue with them sagging their pants. All their friends, a lot of their friends that they were with, they walked around sagging. But they knew daddy didn't compromise. So it has to start with a generation of black men that are not compromising with it. And no, this is 2024. I agree with Pastor. You got to be very careful walking up to a stranger and ask him to pull his pants up. You got to be careful. And so what we have to do is we just in our community, I believe that we shouldn't compromise. I believe that we should be leaders in our community. I believe that we should stand for something. I believe that, this is what I believe, and I agree with Pastor. When they start to see the strong black men in our community not compromising and leading, like Pastor said, we got a lot of successful brothers in the audience right here. A lot of successful pastors here. When we start leading, then guess what? I believe it'll be less sagging. It'll be less drug dealing. I mean, we got a lot of brothers in here that's successful, got nice cars, got good jobs, got money in the bank, nice houses. But they have to be able to see that leadership. You just can't. And see, social media and the internet is painting a different picture. But in our communities and in our neighborhoods, they have to see us. And that's what I believe. We have to be more transparent and we have to be more leaders.
And right before you comment, I want to put something out right quick. We're throwing this word around community, right? But so let's define what community is by definition, right? So as black men, black people, ancestral-wise, we come from a tribal foundation, right? We come from community. Community is 2 words, common and unity. It's common and united. So what by definition is people who have something in common. They share ideals, morals, belief systems, agendas, right? And the unity part is they're united. So a community is people who share the same ideas and morals and belief systems and ideals combined, united together as one. That what forms a community. When you don't have a sense of community, you're isolated. When you're isolated, you're trying to figure out who you are from everyone else who don't know who they are. And like I said, we just lost that sense of community. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dr. Smith. Look, I've heard some of the non-orthodox thoughts, comments made. I'm an HR guy by trade. So mind your business. When I say mind your business, you can't say, well, this guy's feminine, that guy's feminine. Ain't none of your business. I mean, it's really not. So you guys made points. You just can't walk up to anybody. Now, I'm going to say this. Your beliefs, my beliefs are my beliefs. So when we start to put our beliefs on other people, that's a problem. Because everybody's not going to believe what you believe. We said we lose our masculine. I see guys in dresses. Ain't your business. If you ain't got nothing on, why are you worried about it? We said the black man, we start off saying we all monolithic. That means we're not the same. But we adjust the way, like I said, you raise your son a certain way, I raise mine. Listen, if one of my sons came to me and said, Dad, I'm gay, would I be disappointed? Absolutely. But that's his life. He's my son, and I rather have him in my life than out of my life because I got some orthodox beliefs. So, so we got to be hard. No, dog. I get my feet done and my nails done. Don't make me no less a man because you run up on Smith Rock, it's over. So let's get this. So when you start talking about these men feminine, you grab one of them dudes and see how much man he or she might be. So mind your business.
Right. So one thing I want to say though, right? So now with this particular topic, I agree with you, right? But you gotta be careful about when you're saying mind your business, right? Because these young men should be our business. Because we could raise our sons to be whoever they want. And I could tell, okay, that family doing whatever they want with their child. But then when they're in school, when they're in the mall, they're in grocery stores, your child is coming across my child. Or another point, if your child gets shot by the police or something happens to him, you come knocking on my door for support, right? But my input wasn't valid a few months ago. And these guys represent churches, you know, like when they can't find somewhere to host a funeral, they come knocking on these guys' doors, right? So if we're going to be real, we're going to be real on both sides, right? So to some degree, and for me, like I said, responsibility that's my trigger. So for me, if I see a young man that's going, and it's my opinion, wayward, and I don't say anything, I feel
What does wayward mean?
so if I'm, let's be specific. If I'm in my neighborhood and if I see your son selling drugs, right? He's out there selling drugs, whatever, right? Now, I'm not going to say, hey, man, don't sell no drugs, and I'm Mr. Goody Guy. I'm not going to do that, right? But I still feel some kind of way about it because I know what comes from that, right? So if I say, hey, Rob, I saw your son out there, bro, like, man, you know what I'm saying, he out there doing whatever. Do you appreciate me being involved that way, or should I just mind my business?
I was talking about behavior-wise when it comes to male feminality. If
Okay.
you saw my son doing something wrong, I would expect you to do that because I'm from the same school. Smack him in the head, not get home, I get it. You know what I'm
Gotcha.
saying? When you start, I do lawsuits every day. I was just telling you I was in court today because somebody was misbehaving. And that's a problem when we start getting in, telling somebody, you know, if you come to me and say, look, guy, I don't want to work with this gay guy. Okay, no problem, then quit.
Right.
So we got to be careful. I understand that, but you know, we can't say I love everybody and then on the next breath, man, I ain't messing with that gay dude. That's.
I don't think nobody was saying that.
No, you did. You did say that. It not you, but it did come out that way. You can't say something that about a person then you said, well, I do love my brother, and then you go on the other Bible, you know, man, his lifestyle ain't my thing. That's a double negative, and then you cancel that out.
Let me say this. First of all, I respect that, what you're saying, but God created a man and a woman. This whole thing right now has to do with a seductive spirit when a man decides he don't want to be a man anymore. And so much has been said here. And I made some notes right here. Yeah, we have to have some icebreakers and understand that. And in every family in here has someone who's role playing, whether it's a daughter or your son, who thinks that now she's a man or he thinks she's a woman now. And we have to love them because they are, bone of our bone and flesh of our flesh. We don't have to accept what they're doing. It's right. Am I right about it? But the problem with our young men today is that a lack of trust is what a problem is. 4 men, I'm on the job, passed by a young man. They roll up on his chopper, stop me. Say, school, what up? Got one of them jobs for us. I said, y'all get out of the car. They all get out. They all got slippers on. I'm looking at them. I said, okay, what can you do? I can work. I said, how you gonna work with slippers on? Well, I can go get some shoes. I said, how long is it gonna take you? I live over here. You understand what I'm saying? But here's the deal. Now I notice a gun in the car. But I got an icebreaker for him. I'm sitting there and I'm talking to him. I say, well, look, who the gun for? Well, that's mine. I said, you got a license for that? Not necessarily. I said, how many of y'all got guns in here? All of us got guns. I said, I'm going to make a deal with you. I'm going to pay you $15 an hour. But I need them guns. And I'm going to give you a job as long as you want to work. All of them but one of them gave me the guns. You understand what I'm saying? Now listen, this really happened. They need to be able to trust somebody. 2 of them are still employed with me. One of them went somewhere else, and the other one, I'm not sure what he's doing, but I did my level best. They want to trust. They need to be able to trust and know that economically, they want to be stimulated. I believe that. They're looking for a way out of what their situation is, and they're just not sure how to get there and how to get there. And, be part.
And just to wrap this up, we got to move to the next segment. But I think ultimately, and we can disagree on semantics and specifics, but ultimately, I believe, Brother Key kind of hit into this. If you build a relationship, ultimately, we talk about God. God is love. If you have genuine love and respect for another man, that's where it starts. I think if you have a love and respect foundation, you can build anything upon that foundation. So we're going to move on to our next question, guys. But good topic, good conversation. Dear black man, what do you fear?
I'm going to start on that one because I was pondering this question early, and there's a part of me that says, man, I ain't really scared of nothing. And then when I started thinking about the whole toxic masculinity thing, and so I began to just ponder, and one of the things that came up for me, and this is real, and this is for me, is I had a fear of success. And explaining that is that I would get to a certain level in whatever endeavor that I was doing, and I would self-sabotage because there was something inside of me that said I didn't deserve to have this success. Or with this success came a greater responsibility, and I didn't want to have that greater responsibility upon me. I just wanted to fly under the radar. Just coast, just be here and not experience the fullness that God had for me. So that was actually my biggest fear, was being successful.
And why is that?
I believe that now I no longer have that. I believe that it all started out when I was coming up as a youngster. So I was one of those guys that grew up without a dad in my life, like many of us have, raised by my great grandmother and my great aunt, not my mom. My mom died, and every time that I would love somebody, they died, and it was always taken. It was always taken. So I guarded. I just continue to guard and guard and guard. And so then when even in relationships, when I had it looked like a successful relationship, I sabotaged that because, something gonna happen. If I had success in that career, oh man, that's gonna get taken away from me. So that bred that fear of succeeding. If I stayed on one level, then that's where I would be, and I was cool with that. But that was a false narrative.
And that way what that way of thinking is, it's a sense of control, right? When you say somebody would die or you would lose, that's outside your control. So if you say, well, I'm gonna end this on my own terms, that's you say, even if it's negative, I'm still controlling my situation. And control seem like give you the false pretense that you're battling fear, but you're really not. So I'll go second. So for me, I'm the opposite of that. I told you what defines me as a man with responsibility. The one thing that I fear is failure. I cannot look in the faces of the people that I feel responsible for and feel like I didn't come through for them. I fear failure. You want to see me transform into the worst form of me? It put me close to failure. I'm going to kick, fight, scream, and do whatever to not fail. And that's my fear. I mean, honestly, I can't say I'm over that. Like that's my fear.
For me, I think it's been progressive, right? There was a season in my life where I had such a great sense of success that I was afraid of failure, right? But then God took me through a season of my life where I failed so much that I stopped being afraid of it. Because I realized, man, I'll never forget it, man. We had a major project that we were doing. I was about 30 years old. I mean, I was literally one vote from my first $1 million deal, okay? And I put everything I had into this deal, man. And at the last moment, I fell one vote short. I'll never forget the next morning, I was surprised I woke up. I was like, wait a minute. Because I grew up, and to that point, fearing failure because I was successful. I had been successful. I do all of this big deal, incredible project, everything I put in it, all my energy, all of those things, failed, woke up the next morning and looked around and thought, I still got my house, still got my car, still got my wife, still got my kid. And I realized failure ain't that bad. Took the lessons from it, picked up, went to the next one, right? So I stopped fearing failure, fearing success, been there. Now I'm at a place where I fear fear. I used to think that was the craziest thing that man said, that the greatest thing, the only thing we had to fear is fear itself. The brother was on to something. Because fear is so debilitating that now I'm afraid to be afraid. But I know as long as I'm not afraid, one thing gonna happen. I'm gonna win or I'm gonna learn. But if I'm afraid to try, man, to me, that's the thing that I'm afraid of, is that what am I afraid to try? I've got to my hope in my life, it goes back to responsibility, transcending, leadership, faith. The key to one of the things I'm afraid of is there's going to be an opportunity that I have to either fail and learn or to try and win, but I'm going to be afraid to even engage it, right? And so the thing I fear is that I know the power of fear. Fear is extremely debilitating and limiting. And so the thing that I am always pushing against in my life is the fear of fear. And so I try stuff that I know, man, this may be a fear point for me. I'm going for it because I don't want fear to exist in my life because it's going to be limited in the ability.
Now, so I want to get you guys involved. I'm going to put some guys on the spot. Jeff, let's go to Leonard right here, right quick. Leonard, what do you fear?
DT, I think you touched on it. I used to think I feared death. From New Orleans, Louisiana, saw a lot of death, destruction. Got shot at 12 years old, had to respond back at that young. So I used to think it was death, but now I feel like it's losing control, right? Not being in control of any situation.
And I think as black men, a lot of times, we have so many factors, stacked against us sometimes that we feel like we're not in control. Like you can get stopped on a routine traffic stop, and that could be like a life-changing event, And so I know for me, it's that sense of control is not there a lot of times. It really isn't. Anybody else want to interject? Key. Okay, Josh, go ahead, Josh.
I think that fear, to translate, I think fear is taught, right? You got to think, I got a little baby at home, right? My baby just turned 1. And, man, I first time, man, I didn't think I could have kids. I got a brand new baby, man. I'm sorry, I ain't trying to go off in that. But my baby, fearless. She jumps off the bed. She jump out the car seat. I mean, this little girl here is a daredevil. And I'm thinking like, God, dog, man, this didn't happen to all y'all before, But for me, this is the first time, I wake up, man, if you don't catch her, she don't have no fear. So I'm telling her, baby, stop. Know you're going to fall, right? And then kind of to translate that into black men, right? A lot of us are, and I'm not downplaying nobody's parents by far, a lot of us have a community effort when we're raised, grandma, auntie, right? So what happens is that, and I'm not downplaying women by any means when I say what I say. A woman's fear and a man's fear tends to be different, right? So if you're raised by a woman, don't go out there dark, those fears are projected onto that young man, and then it transcends to them differently, right? Kind of bring it back to me, right? I ran for office twice, and one thing it showed me was that, man, you got to be fearless, because, man, you got to be all teeth and skin, because running for office will eat you up, man. I'm talking about you got people dumping their insecurities, their fears on you, what can happen, whatever, and then you get to a while, like, for me, I was like, dawg, you can't eat me, so that's just how I live life in general. I don't, per se, have a fear because I plan correctly. Things are going to happen, right? But and I'm going to wrap it up. For me, I don't like somebody around me that's afraid all the time, because it's going to make me angry, because I don't have time to put those negative thoughts in my head, right? So I run a business, and my business solely depends off of each individual customer, right? I don't have a guarantee. There's no 40. I could work 60 hours and not make a dime, and I got to smile when I'm doing my thing, right? So I can't fear that, right? Because I got people at home depending on me. So if I sit there like, oh, man, Jeff ain't called me for tow his car, man. He called somebody up. Man, I can't meet. Hey, man, guess what? The brother probably forgot. It's cool. Ain't no fear in that, right? Man, Braylon was in Houston. He ain't even think about it, man. Ain't Josh. Hey, if you stay focused, right, things are going to happen, right? All that fear, blind and raised emotion, man, it don't get you nowhere, man. Because you succumb to the fear, right? This stuff get the plague on you. So that's just my opinion on it.
One more from the audience. Bring it to Key. In the front row, right there. Key, what do you fear?
Me personally, just like you, brother, I got one little girl. She definitely keep me on my toes for sure. But
Right.
if I had to choose a fear, I'd probably choose not being able to provide. I have a fear of not being able to give myself, my daughter, my family, the things that they deserve, or the things that I feel that they deserve, the things that I know that my God can provide, and I know that I can provide through him, you feel me? So being able to provide is probably one of my top fears, because I want to make sure that my family ain't never got to worry about where they going to put their head at, where their next meal coming from, how we going to get to where we going. I don't like that stress, and I don't feel like they deserve that for their life.
Now, so Jeff, we'll go to this guy. We'll come back to the panel. But real quick, so if his answer sounds a lot like my answer, that's my son. And when we talk about being an example, like of what's taught and what's learned, like your children are watching and they're listening and they're learning from you. Like that answer sounds just like my answer, because, he grew up in that, like honestly. Go ahead, brother.
I fear for the younger generation, that little boy there, and even up to 40 years old. I've been around, I've seen a lot, been through a lot. I wanted to say earlier, a part of the problem is that we scared to love on our young men when they babies. I still kiss my son, 38 years old. I want him to know he's seen that. He saw all the years where I was getting up and going to work for a month at a time offshore to make sure that they can do whatever it is that they were trying to do in school and extracurriculars, but we gotta live, so we gotta work, but we gotta show the love. And that's what's happening with a lot of these young kids. They don't have nobody to love them. If you came to my house and hung out with my kids, you had to go by the rules. A month ago, they had a young man that was in the bathroom after service, sagging pants. No, not in here, you're not doing that. We can't be afraid to tell them when they're wrong, because if we don't ever tell them they're wrong, it's not going to change. That's all I got to say.
And real quick, I think a point I want to put out there too is sometimes we look at something like sagging pants and we're like, well, no, mind your business, and we're being judgmental. But because a sagging pants does seem minuscule, but what happens is you're not seeing the problem, you're seeing the symptom of the problem. And I think a lot of times when you love somebody and when you love them, you learn them. And if you have a conversation with a breast, I wanted to have this conversation here, like you dig deep enough, you're going to uncover some stuff, honestly. So Jeff, come back to you on what do you fear?
Fear, Don, I mean, at this point in my life, I don't fear anything but God at this point. But I can say the fear of failure was probably most prominent for me. Growing up the way I grew up, single parent, my mother. My father died when I was about 9 years old. We grew up very poor, extremely poor. And so it wasn't until I became an adult and I became a Christian that I began to understand that. Before I understood that, the fear of failure was very, very strong in my life. At this point, I have to be very mindful of it at this point because I have to always remind myself that God is my source. I don't want to go back to my childhood and the way I came up in college. Even when I was in college, sometimes didn't have food to eat. Not enough money to pay your rent at your apartment. That fear of lack, that fear of insufficiency, that fear of being broke, that fear of failure. So I think that fear of failure is what I really had a strong issue with.
So this is going to push us to our next question, right? So if you hear talk about your dad dying or what your loss, right? And I know where our motivations come from. Our motivations are stemmed from events in our life, right? So my next question is, dear black man, have you healed? When I ask that question, it's a two-part question. What trauma or offense has had a significant impact on you, and have you healed from that? Anybody?
I guess I'll start again. Going back to what I first said about growing up in a fatherlessness environment, it was magnified because I went to a private school. And in that private school, it was predominantly white. And everybody's dad was there and everybody's dad was active. And the school would have field days to where the dad would come over and they do events and things. And here I was, one of the few little black boys, and my aunt was there. And I thank God that she was there, but it didn't look like what theirs looked like. So I kind of grew up angry, and I grew up hurt by that, in that I didn't take anything off of anybody. I didn't mess with anybody, but I didn't take anything off of anybody. So if because of those experiences of not having a man figure in my life, especially in that school setting, and any time that I was approached in an aggressive manner, and a male would get in the hand's reach, I wouldn't argue, I just hit you. And so from 4th grade through 8th grade, I got in a fight every single day with that. And in my elementary school, Roots came out when I was in elementary. Now I'm at all boy, predominantly white private school, and here's Roots. And I had this issue with me. So the things that came about with Roots, the names and all of these things. So I fought. And because I went to a private school, but I lived in a black neighborhood, we had to do bus switches to where the bus would drop us off at one of the public schools to switch to another bus. So I was at that school, which was all black, and I went to a private all-boys school, which they called, Pastor, called it Pecatech, because it was an all-boy school, so I had to fight over there and things. So all throughout my high school years, and even when I went to college, these are the things that I did. I've been to jail 3 times for fighting because I had blind rage that once it kicked on, it wasn't kicking off until you knocked me out. I knocked you out. I've had people put guns to my head, and just by the grace of God that I'm still alive. But I healed from that. And the only way that I healed, and I know you don't want us to pull out our pastor's card, but the only way that I healed is that I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior.
Feel free to use your pastor card.
Okay, there was
Feel
no
free to use your
healing
pastor
for
card.
me outside of that because I couldn't hear, I couldn't see the healing. I couldn't go past the hurts and the pains, and I couldn't get past the anger and all those things. I couldn't get past, somebody said about trusting that we don't trust. I had none of that ability to do that. So everything for me was conquer. And when I did give my life to Christ, man, immediately there was a change, in the scales came off my eyes more than anything, to where I could see the person that I currently was. And it took time to go through that process of healing. The scales happened overnight. The scales happened immediately, but that process had to come about. And I think that sometimes that we all have some wounds in things, and I may be speaking to the choir, but Jesus Christ, and getting in that word shows us a different way, shows us the way that we should be, the way that we were created to be, and to allow ourselves to go through that healing process. And of course, I've had people along the way, and I'm not going to go down that whole pathway to give others time to talk. But that's the traumatic thing that I suffered with. But that's the one point through my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ in which my healing began.
Jeff.
I would say losing my father. At this point in my life, I'm healed from it, but it was traumatic. Growing up without a father. I mean, I have 3 sons. I said it earlier. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of the decisions I made was because of my sons, making sure that that they seen a strong father. Making sure that I was transparent. Just letting them see it all, because we're not perfect. And there's no sense of us men pretending that we are perfect. And so I really feel like, to be honest with you, is the loss of my father. And it was only, like Brother Keith said, it was only because of Jesus Christ coming into my life was where the healing took place.
Now, in the audience, by show of hands, anybody lost a parent? So we share this, right? Like, the loss of a parent is traumatizing, debilitating. I mean, nothing breaks you down more other than the loss of a child. That the loss of a parent is one of your greatest traumatic experiences you want to endure as a human of any kind, but especially as a black man. And it requires a lot of time, a lot of therapy sometimes, a lot of God, a lot of honesty. Like sometimes you just we try to push through it, we're taught to push through everything. But so if I have to leave you guys with one word when it comes about healing, take the necessary time to heal. And that time is not a month. It's not a year. Like, that time is not really defined. There's no certain time. And you're going to never really get over it. It gets easier, but you're never going to get over it. But a lot of times we just put things like that in our back pocket. We got to keep on working, keep on supporting, keep on grinding, keep on getting out the mud, and we never take time to see about us. And that stress will eat away at you and eat away at you until eventually you're going to break down. So make a conscious and proactive step to seek that healing. It could be just getting on the phone with a brother that you trust, or coming to a church, or seeing a therapist, but definitely don't just sit there and not do anything. Raylan?
Yeah, man, I think there's several, moments of trauma, several moments of hurt I could choose, but I think one that is important and relevant is church hurt. It's a popular conversation, particularly in the pew. But I've began to say there's probably no one more church hurt in your church than your pastor. It is traumatizing to learn you can be doing right and it go wrong. Man, it's traumatizing. to say, man, that doing good is hard. That shifts your reality. When you say, man, if I, because you grow up thinking if I do the right things, things gonna go right. And then you come to church and say, man, if I worship the Lord, things gonna be good. And then you become a pastor and you're leading and you're sacrificing and you're pouring everything you got. And man, when someone at that church just walks out because they feel like it, someone you've discipled and poured in, decided, just in the whim, Pastor, you didn't hurt me, but somebody else did, so I'm leaving you. When you are leading and guiding your church with vision and people are fighting and you've got, they will admit you got vision, but they fighting blind. It's a traumatizing situation, man. And it takes a lot to really deal with, to really wrap your head around that is a reality. And again, conversations with God, it was just like before. You're sitting there thinking, I don't have enough of this. I don't have as much of this. I don't have as much of that. And God says something as simple as, but do you have enough? Right? Blows your mind. From church hurt, the conversation with God, I said, well, I did this and they did this and I did this and they did this. And I'm telling God all the things that has hurt me about church life, man. And God says another simple thing. He said, did it work? And I say, well, no, it didn't work. He said, well, why you hurt? It's hard to be hurt when you realize it didn't work. Right? Because now you're projecting this is how I should feel, not how this is the reality. If it didn't work, why you hurt? Right? And so sometimes processing through our various hurts is realizing it didn't work. That yes, I lost a father, but did it break me? Did it yeah, the enemy took this or took that, but did it work? And if it didn't work, why are we hurt? Right? And that's what really, bolstered me is I had to ask myself, what did I really lose? What was really broken? So give you another quick example where recently I lost a powerful mentor of mine, man. Dr. Jimmy R. Stevens, New Covenant Faith. There's my dad, there's Pastor Stevens, okay? As far as mentorship, and I will say that, my father was the most influential person in my childhood. Dr. Stevens was the most influential person in my adulthood, okay? So right up there. And about a little over a month ago, he passed away. And man, when I got the news, I'm slammed, man. I'm floored. Not floored to the point, you ever been hit so hard you didn't even know how, you couldn't even cry. You just like, man, what in the world, right? Just completely floored. And I was having this conversation with myself, man, I can't believe I lost, my mentor. I can't believe I lost Pastor Steve. I can't believe we lost him. And God says another simple thing. How you lost so much and he left so much in you? Blew my mind. He said, you sitting here like he didn't leave himself in you. What did you really lose, right? And so I think a lot of times dealing with hurt, how to heal from hurt, is accurately assess it. We allow hurt to be like the boogeyman, right? We allow hurt to be like that shadow, right? The little person with the hand, the little shadow, but boy, it looked like a big old monster up on the wall, right? Sometimes we got to pull up close enough to hurt to really see what it is, really see how much it is, and really see what was taken, what was broken. And a lot of times it's Satan has just magnified that in our psyche, in our mind. We say, man, I lost even a grandfather, a mentor. And then you look around and say, but how many other mentors I got? how many people are still left, right? And so sometimes, so many times, I think church hurt, losing someone special, it's about asking yourself the real question: what did I really lose? And then ask yourself, what's really left? And then allow yourself to honestly move forward with what's there, with what's left, and what's possible, and making sure that you, again, really honestly ask God to help me to really take account and real inventory. And what you will realize is, it's over and over in the Word of God, we see it that, man, there's more for me than against me. It ain't working. I still have enough. All of those things, that the prospects are still high, and that really helps in that begins to create hope, and hope is that ointment, man, that really creates that healing that we need.
And we'll get a comment or a story from someone from the audience after my comment. But when I tell my story is not major like you guys' story, right? But sometimes it don't take much to mess you up, right? It could be a minor experience, right? So this will seem a little comical, but I'm just being honest, right? I grew up in a two-parent home, right? Mom and dad, a loving environment. And to this day, I pride myself on creating this happy bubble for myself, right? Like, so we grew up in the projects. I mean, we went to church 5 times a week. We had great friends. We played basketball, football every day. Like, I had like a great life, right? When I got into junior high, I went to school, and I was wearing my Pro Wings from Payless, right? And somebody said, "What's on your feet, bro?" I was like, "What you mean?" Like, those little plastic shoes you got. Like, what's that, right? And I had no idea, coming from because everybody wore Pro Wings on my street, that according to their standards, that wasn't adequate, right? And then maybe a couple days later in school, it's like, "Dude, what's those jeans? Wrangler? Where you get those from?" Right? And I was like, "What you talking about? Everybody on my street wear Wrangler, But what it was is I was made to feel inadequate, right? And not knowing, living in a happy bubble, and at church, everybody is wonderful. At home, everybody's wonderful. Family reunions, we go to Piccadilly, everything's wonderful. But when I got into school, and with kids like 11, 12 years old, they made me feel inadequate, right? Then girls was like, "I don't like how you look." Dudes like, "I don't like what you're wearing." And the feeling of being inadequate triggered something in me I didn't know was there. And that was it don't seem major, but it was major to me because that was a personal trigger for me. And then for a long time after that, I was intent on proving to you that I was adequate. Not only was I adequate, but I was better than you, right? And I carried that chip on my shoulder for a long time. And it might sound like something minor, but the devil will use anything. If he can just get you off track just a little bit, he'll keep you from your destiny. If you're a quarterback, right? If the quarterback is behind center, everything is great. But if you go over behind the tackle, like a half a foot step to the left or to the right, it destroys the whole thing, right? So sometimes, like the death of a father, that's an obvious, major transition. That's like taking you out the field completely, right? But sometimes you can just push you just a little bit to the left and the right. It can cause just as much damage to you. And so take notes of those minor things as well as those major things. Anybody want to share something?
DT, I got to ask you, how did you heal, brother?
I don't know if I quite healed just yet.
Honesty.
But honestly, when we talk about dear black man, who are you? When I realized that another person don't determine who I am who I am because that's who I am, and that's who God said I am. And when I'm totally confident in who I am, there's nothing you can tell me. Right. And that just is what it is. Brad? Yep, Brad.
Yeah, for me, it was the loss of my mom, man, at the age of about 20, man. And what happened was it took me for a ride. I wasn't even aware of what was finna happen. She died of cancer. I'm in my 20s. She in the hospital. She about to die. I'm out with my baby mama. This all seemed strange now, but at that time I thought that was normal because I didn't think she was finna die. But when she passed, man, my life I went on a roller coaster. I'm talking about drugs, drinking, And I ain't talking about 2 years. I'm talking about 10, 15. By the time I looked, man, I was like 30-something. We talking about I'm in my 20s. I was like 30-something. Had nothing. Had to go back to my daddy. Was living with my uncle. You know, all the people that said we'll be there for you, they didn't mean we'll be there for you if you mess your life up. They mean we'll be there for you in support. But what changed me and what healed me, man, was, man, that's when I found out how real God was. Because the stuff I was doing, man, I'd be in jail today. I'm not saying God condoned what I was doing. I'm saying he kept his hedge around me while I was doing it. And man, now that I can look back at that, I can honestly say, man, it was nothing but the grace of God. It was nothing but the grace of God, man. And not only was he was working something out for me, because see, DT, that's my partner, and Pastor Harris, that's my pastor. But the crazy thing is, I was in Southern Touch with DT. We was doing shows. I had no money. I had nothing. But one thing he always did was, come get me. Take me out to eat. And what that did for me is, that's what I want. That's what I want. That lifestyle, that's what I want. So what Brad started to do? Started to get that job. Man, I was 30-something years old working at Burger King. I had to swallow that pride because time had been flew. Working at Burger King, it humbled me, man. It humbled me and it floored me, man, for, you know, I could have been working at the same place as my children. My children could have been, that's a starter job. He humbled me, man. And where I'm at today, man, I thank God. I thank God, not just for the materialistic, but he just showed me all those things that people chase. Man, I got that and more. Man, I had no vehicle. Man, you know how many cars I done had? You know how many cars? I done had so many cars, that don't even matter to me no more. I wanted a house, that don't even matter to me no more. Man, I'm trying to live to be, I want my 10 now. I'm on something else now, you know, as you grow, because he gonna grow you. And it goes back to what we was talking about, the kids sagging. If we honest, we all sagged our pants before. If we honest, but we gotta be honest. Now, we sag, it wasn't like they sagging now. They took it a whole nother notch. You know what I mean? But if we honest, when we come into these discussions, let's be honest. Hey man, I see myself in you. I see thank God for my pastor. Because you know what we do? It's me and another brother. Man, we wear our Jordans. We deacons in the church, but we will wear our Jordans. He allow us to wear our Jordans. You know why we do that? Because somebody ain't got suits. Somebody ain't got the blazer. They need to be able to see, oh, okay, we got a sneakerhead up. Yeah, come on. But I pray, though. I'm going to show you I pray. This is just to get your attention. But we going to pray. We going to pray. But that's all I got, man. Thank you.
That's real. That's real. And so, okay, in the back, Jeff, in the back.
Harold Guillory. My traumatic incident was abandonment. Abandonment by my mother, abandonment by my father. And throughout life, that's how it was for me. If you became a friend because you was around my age, you was in my hood, or whatever the case may be, at some point, your family moved, or whoever I was reside with, we moved. So after a while, as a young man, I resist being close to people, befriending individuals, because I knew at some point you would leave me, or I would leave you, you know. So have I healed? I'm still healing. In the process of me going through all these things, I don't know how many other brothers in here, but I served time in the penitentiary because of all the things that were going on in my life. And I want to touch a little bit on that, what we were talking about earlier about what are you seeing. Before I got here, I commented on the page saying in order for a man to be a man, he has to first see a man. What are we seeing?
That's good.
What are we showing? You know, the other thing is, when I got out of prison, I started speaking in the schools to tell young people where I came from and how I got to where I was that led me to prison and all those types of things. And I used to see young brothers in the schools sagging, and I still see it today. And I would hear some of my own black people would say, well, you know, they got that from jail. That's where they learned that from. When I was in the penitentiary 7.5 years, I ain't seen that man walking around in the penitentiary with his pants sagging. So if any of y'all heard that before, that ain't where it came from. What I see is that just like back in the day when I was growing up, the box cut, you know, high top fade. So the sagging pants kind of started off like it was a fashion thing. And then if you remember, fellas, at one point the police got involved in the sagging to where they had signs in town. They actually wanted to make it an ordinance or a law to where if you were sagging, you would get a fine or you would get arrested or whatever. But then some of the detectives and law enforcement agency, they saw that some of these officers were coming back to the police station and to the jail laughing on how they caught that young man. And they say how I caught him was because his pants fell so low to his ankles to where he tripped himself. So then they removed the signs. They removed all the, if you sag, you're going to jail or whatever the case may be, because they realized one thing. It became shackles on your feet. It became you trapping yourself. So if we want to talk about how we can help our young brothers, when you talk to them about sagging, tell them that. What you're doing is you're shackling yourself.
And so one thing I want to talk about when we talk about healing, right? A lot of times when you go through a traumatic experience and you go through some kind of a hurt, you tend to blame yourself, right? And also when you're hurt people, right? So two things I want to just touch on real quick. Have you forgiven yourself? And who are you bleeding on?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. You know, you even in church hurt, from a pastor's perspective, you say, man, I must have did something. You know, and you go back and you try to evaluate that. And I would say, yes, I've forgiven myself. But I didn't forgive myself before I learned the lesson, right? And so I'll give that example to you. The issue that I saw is I didn't have the exact right focus, right? I allowed for me, and I'll be transparent, I allowed the vision to become a particular facility rather than a particular ministry and movement. And because I did that, when the facility moved, people couldn't see that this was a better fit for the ministry because the ministry was not promoted as the vision, the building was, right? And that was a mistake I made, right? But the moment I realized the mistake I made, I realized something. I said, what helped me to forgive myself is, one, it didn't work. God still moved, things still work, God's still blessing, that's one. And two, I realized, man, I'm glad I learned that lesson now, right? That was a valuable lesson to learn early in ministry and growing in ministry, and I've seen the results of learning that. So I think part of forgiving myself was, it's hard to forgive yourself if you ain't learned the lesson. What did I get out of this? Now, once I've got something out of it, okay, there's some value here. I got something out of it. All right, I can forgive myself and I can move on, right? And, of course, there's the God component that God, you understand grace and you understand mercy and all of those things. But the grace and the mercy is that you get a lesson out of your mistake. That's the grace, right? And then you can say, okay, well, I can move past that. The bleeding on, I think, is I think that's the powerful part about faith, right? Is that we have this throne, we have this seat that we can go to and cry out and bleed and do all of those things. And you know, I'm grateful that I serve a God that's big enough to handle my pity party. You know, and he's big enough to handle my anger. He's big enough to handle my questions. And so I find myself in these real intense dialogues with God, where I have, and I'm sure it's you know, it works his patience sometimes, right? But that has kept me, because I have this personal relationship with God, has kept me from bleeding on other people, because I know I can go to God and I don't have to go in a sanctimonious or healed or perfect way. I can go to him broken, right? And I can bleed there get the healing that I need, get the Band-Aids that I need, and I can go out and then go before these people and not bleed on the people. I can bleed in the back room. And I can be strong, go back and bleed again in the back room, right? But there's a personal relationship with God. I will also say this. Listen, I got a mental health therapist that's cold, brother. Yeah. Brother is cold.
Invest in one.
I drive to Houston to see mine. I cold, you know. And so you got to have those outlets. You got to have those people. But it's just, you know, it's just like in life, right? Life comes with garbage. But it's certain places you put it, right? You ain't gonna ever live a life and accomplish things and do things and not have those hurts, not have those pains, not have those traumas, right? But there's a certain place those things go, right? You're not about to run a house and ain't gonna have no garbage. You show not with 4 kids like I got a whole bunch of garbage in my house. But it's a certain place it go, and then you put it in a certain place, and then it's a certain way it leaves, right? And I think that's when it comes to that bleeding part. There's a certain place you can bleed, and a certain place you can go to get the healing that you need.
And before you guys answer, the reason I put that question in there about who you're bleeding on, so like, a quick example. If someone shoots you, right, the person who shoots you won't get blood on them, right? The people who come to help you is the one that gets all the blood on them, whether it's a family member or a friend or a good Samaritan or the EMTs, the doctors. The people who are there to help you are the one who get bled on. So I thought it was important that not only forgive yourself, but realize while you're hurting, be careful of the people that's around that's trying to help you or be there for you because they're the ones that you're bleeding on. Go ahead, guys.
Right. I agree with both statements. For me, I did forgive myself for the responses that I made based on the transgressions that I felt were that I had to endure, and they were plenty. You know, that I had to go in and seek forgiveness for myself. And also God took me on a journey to where I had to go and ask for forgiveness from some folks, which was even harder than the self-forgiveness thing for me. And like Pastor Braylon, I bleed mainly on God. And me and Sam were talking when we first came in, and we were around so many people in college and as pastors and ministers, you know, we're always around people all the time. And I find more healing in bleeding when I can get on my boat, when I can get on my kayak, when I can just take a drive, don't have to put no music on. I can ride and I just start crying and just be real transparent with God, and he's never failed to heal me in whatever that situation, whatever that spot that I was on. Now, there are some people that when I go through acute trauma, meaning that thing happens right there, that they're there and I lean on that person to bleed. But though there's some of the deeper things that outside of going to a therapist, that you have to be careful who you bleed on. I'm a country boy from New Iberia, and I remember my grandmother would always say this: people don't know you got dirty drawers unless you hang them on the line dirty. You know, so we have to be careful in things who we express some of those deep hurts to, because they can magnify those hurts, because not everybody, unfortunately, has your best interest at heart. And we have to be real about those things. It's good, and I do have a couple of brothers that, you know, that help walk me through some things, through some mental ascent things that I might just be having foggy. I lost my mentor and Brother Charles and stuff, and that was a blow that, you know, didn't have any more to form those relationships, and we're still working on that, you know, to go that route. So yes, I have forgiven myself. God first said I bleed on, And then there are some other brothers and also some counseling therapies. I think that we learn that it's okay to go talk to a professional, men. It's okay to do that, just like it's okay to get health checkups. And just off the mark a little bit, a pastor friend of mine told me that if something goes wrong with your car, you take it to the shop. You bring it in. But if something goes wrong with our body, we think, man, I'm going to drink a glass of water and go sit down, take a nap. Something goes on mentally with us, we think that we can just go lay down. Man, we can just push it aside and forget about it. And it's going to be all right. I'm a man, man. I can deal with that. I don't need nobody to help me with those things. And that's false. And it just eats us up. And that's why black men die from heart attacks and strokes more than any other nationality, because we don't believe in mental health and bleeding on someone. We just got to be careful who we bleed to.
And what happens is, if you get physically, right, you get physically hurt, like you get shot or stabbed, you can see the blood. But when you get emotionally, mentally, spiritually hurt, you don't see it. But it's there. I promise you, it's there.
Yeah, it's certainly there. Yes, I've forgiven myself. I made some poor decisions in my life, and I've forgiven myself. And mainly, I'm like Brother Keith. Mainly, I bleed on God. Because, you have to be very careful who you transparent with. You have to be very careful who you confide in. You have to be very careful of the people that you have close in your circle. And so what I found that works best for me, personally, is I spend a lot of time in prayer. I've been doing that, lately for the past several years, and allowing God to download in me what I need to get out of me. Allowing God to download in me in the areas that I need to heal. Because a lot of time, if we be truthful, men, we'll allow pride to step in. And see, when pride step in, you sit back and you in denial. You believe that you all right. You believe that you don't need nobody. You believe, man, I got a good job. I'm making money. I'm making a lot of money. I have God in my life, but I don't need nobody else. But just like Pastor Braylon said, the truth be told, sometimes we have to go sit down and talk with someone. Sometimes we have to go lie on that sofa. And we have to just let it all out. And like Pastor Keith said, a lot of times one of the areas in a lot of things that I've read, and I read a lot, is one of the reasons why we have a lot of physical issues is because internally what we have trapped inside of us. And we sit back and we wonder why. High blood pressure. Man, I'm eating right. Nobody else in my family have high blood pressure. Nobody else in my family is a diabetic. Nobody else in my family has heart disease. But it's a lot that's trapped inside of us. A lot of that pressure that's inside of us that we have to learn how to release out as men. But I'm a firm believer that we have to be very mindful, of course, who we release that out to. Because everybody is not in your corner. Everybody you can't tell your issues to. Everybody you can't go to and be transparent with. But I believe if we go to God, for one, and he's our source, and we pray to him, and because prayer has to be a dialogue. It can't just be a monologue. You just can't go in your prayer closet and you doing all the praying. I tried that. It didn't work. But when you go in your prayer closet and prayer becomes that dialogue, and you pray and you spend time with God and you allow him to speak to you, then he'll direct you. I mean, the scripture says it, that if we acknowledge him in all of our ways, he'll direct our path. And he'll direct you to certain things and certain people that you can go to and be transparent with. And you can tell your secrets to them. They're not going to tell someone else, and you can go, because we need each other. I think that's one of the areas with black men that I see is that we're too independent. We don't lean on each other like our forefathers did, like Dr. King them did. Go look at the marches. Go look at some of the videos. They leaned on each other. But we so prideful, we believe, man, look, check this out. Man, that's my boy over there, but guess what? He got problems too. He got issues too. He's got marital problems too. He's got problems too economically. But we have to learn to lean on each other. We have to learn to be there for each other. And I think that's gonna that's going to really help a lot as we move forward.
Iron sharpens iron.
Iron sharpens iron.
You know, I just want to come back on that and maybe put it in a descriptive way, because all of us have said, you know, I believe with God, but then you came back and said, well, man, you got to lean on somebody. And so here's how I see it, and this is a part of my relationship with my mentor, right? And I never shared it with him like this, but this is the way I received it. I said, I only have scratches because of his scars. And he had scars because of his wounds. So there's wounds, there's scars, and there's scratches. You got to be careful who you show your wound to. Right? And traditionally, who you want to show your wound to is somebody that can show you their scar. Because if they got a scar where you got a wound, they probably can tell you how to get healed. Right? But then if now your scars, those places, that things that you've gone through but you've healed, you ought to be able to show those to anybody. We got to stop hard. You got to hide your wounds now and only show your wounds to certain people, but we got to stop hiding our scars. Because if we don't show our scars, the person with the wound won't know who can help them, right? But so the wound part, we got to go to somebody that's got a scar, someone that's been through it, someone that has some medical or some medicinal, the therapist, the pastor, whomever that has some skill that can handle that wound. But then when it comes to the places that we've now healed, we got to be able to testify about those things, because there's going to be somebody that look at your scar and say, man, that look like that's where my wound at. And that begins to address person. And then also when you show people your scars, some people that may not have the wound can say, man, how did you get that? And then they want the testimony of how you got it. And they can avoid the wound because they ask you a question about your scars. And so there were so many scars. For example, Pastor Stephen had wounds that had turned into scars because they had healed. And I would ask about the scars. And because he was so specific on how he got the scar, how he wanted to get the scar, now I go through the same situation, same briar patch I walk through, and I only get scratches. And those are how those things have to work out. We've got to be careful with the wound, but we got to be open with our scars.
Josh, you had a comment?
Talking back to, I'm going to kind of touch on everything. It say, dear black men, have you healed, right? So, kind of open by me, right? It's hard to bother me, man. I got tough skin. I don't care what you say about me, man, because I'm my own man. You know, I feel like you can't eat me. There was a point in time, I left my mama's house at 16, right? Like a lot of men. Been living on my own ever since. But I made some, like kind of Jeff said, I made some poor decisions in life. I wound up homeless. I lost my car and my house in the same day, right? So you have your faith, right? You pray, but you go in this dark place to where Jeff was saying we reach out to brother. How do you reach out to somebody and say, dog, I'm homeless today, dog? You know, and then for me as a man, as a black man, number one, I'm not asking you for nothing because that's how I was raised. You know, if I go up to you, man, you let me wash your car, you let me cut your grass. You can't find nobody that say I asked for no money in this time. It's not me. And I'm not negating no man and saying no man no less than other if any other way, but that's just me, right? So I had to pull myself up out of that, right? And the interesting thing apart about growing with God is I'm still in that tough area, right? Because God do some things to you, make you, man, it make you want to fight everybody. You know, just truth be told, man. Hey, pastor, what you saying is cool, but let me holler at you after I cool down. You know, I know you mean well, right? Because in 2017, I lost my vision for 2 months, right? So I'm in a dark place. Man, ain't nobody come check on me. Ain't nobody come holler at me. And I didn't need nothing, you know. But it's just the fact that I had to move and navigate blind, right? I'm going to doctor's appointments, everything on my own. I can't really see. And I joke a lot. I guess people thought that I was being a jokester, but I'm dead serious. But I'm not finna cry. And I'm not finna beg you for nothing. I'm going to figure it out. And as black men, oftentimes we do that, right? So when you go through enough of those tough spots, right? And it kind of, it goes into bleeding, right? I believe in God and God is there, but I'm not going to let nobody take me back to being homeless, right? And then I don't know what God got ahead of me. So as far as being healed, I'm thankful, right? And then he give me the health every day to wake up and find people just out of nowhere. I get customers, so I rely on that being faithful. So when I say I don't know if I could tell you that I'm healed, right? I can tell you that I'm thankful, and I can tell you that if I done you wrong, I really think back on everything, and I try to apologize to people, right? So I work in that nature, but I'm not gonna tell you that I don't bleed on nobody, right? Because if you come barking for me, I'm gonna come see you, Jack. But with that, right, as black men, kind of to spin it back around, you brothers have healed. Y'all go to people. If nothing else, if you don't tell it here, kind of put it on the internet, because other brothers not going to know where to go for certain resources, right? Like you go to a therapist, you go way to Houston, right? And it's not to negate nobody here, just guess what? Whoever that connection is in Houston, it's like going to grandma's house, right? Like I go online, I go to Southern University. We got great schools here, but walking into Southern, right? Many people treat me like you were in the grandma's house. So no matter how much time I got to take on the drive, no matter how much time I got to stay up late at night, after working all day long online, man, going to Southern, they kind of just grab me like, I'm sorry, baby. Like, you going to graduate, dog. We got you. So, oftentimes as black men, we don't have that because we so busy, right? And kind of transcends to this younger generation, the time that y'all were coming out, and I'm going to speculate around 50s. I ain't put nobody out there. We got the salt and pepper. But I come up I'm in the late, I'm going to be 40 this year, right? So it changed for my generation. You had Frankie Beverly and Mays. Then we wound up with crack cocaine. Then now they got NBA YoungBoy. So it's just a different transition of levels. So when you go to connecting, right, you got to remember that your era of growing up and where you derive from, man, it's a totally different influence, right? It's even the neighborhood, and I'm going to wrap it up because I'm getting long. Even the neighborhood, right? The neighborhoods we grew up in, DT, I remember me and you having a conversation. I'm not going to put you out there, but you started out in the projects, right? Me too. But we've moved out of them neighborhoods, right? So those kids can't see us, right? And it's not to say that we don't feel like we better than those kids. We bought places here and there. We got places for our family, but they're not in those neighborhoods. So those kids can't see those influence of a healed black man, of a saved black man, of a black man that go to work and wear a suit. And it's not me putting no brother down because you live wherever God bless you to live. But these corner blocks, right, from taking out your Frankie Beverly Mays, to adding your drugs, to adding your skinny jeans, to influences on the internet that you can't turn off, right? TV used to turn off, man. Remember that? You had your war stories, right? You had to pray or you had to go to sleep. This stuff don't cut off. So if we're going to go at this a different way, right, we're not going to agree on everything. But the core belief, what we got to believe is that, hey, man, I want to take all y'all into the future, right? Now, you got your slippers on, Jack. Now, being in this element, we might need you to get where you want to be, you might need delivery, right? Delivery kind of brings that about. But that brother with their slippers might connect to that other joker, right? It might not be directly to you, but it's going to be ways you're going to be able to navigate and do that for us all to arrive as black men. And I'm going to say that.
And appreciate that, Josh. And so, and one last point on this topic, we'll go to our last topic and wrap it up for the night, guys. So for me, well, two things. So like these brothers, a couple of these brothers, like Brother Keith to tell you, Brother to tell you, I'll call those guys and I'll be long with on the phone because I ain't talked to nobody in months, right? So we'll start talking about one thing and I'm talking about a whole bunch of other stuff because I honestly don't, I believe internally, right? But the other thing is one outlet I do have is my wife. And we had mentioned our wives up to this point. When I allow myself to, I believe on my wife, and having a wife at home that's nurturing and compassionate, understanding, it's that's one of your biggest therapies. You know what I'm saying? That's one of your biggest outlets. Now, having a wife who's not supportive and nurturing and compassionate, that's even more stressing. But having a supportive, understanding wife, that's a good outlet. That's a good place to bleed. Which brings us to our last topic for the night. We're going to wrap it up, guys. Is, dear black men, who are you to the women in your life? And we're going to ask individually 4 topics. Who are you to the women in your life as a son, as a sibling, as a father, and as a husband? We'll start with you, brother.
Yeah, who am I as a black man to my mother? there's this thing that says we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, right? For me, I believe that part of, and my mom is incredible, and she's still alive and doing well. She's going through a medical challenge right now, but to me, one of the things that I think I'm kind of my mom's hope, right? That her emotional, her inspiration, mothers invest so much in their children, man. They are so sacrificial, and a lot of times they've given up their own dreams to make sure you can achieve yours. My mom, could have done much more than she may have done, but she took the sacrifice. Dad had a great job, so he did that, and she took the sacrifice and said, I'm going to raise these kids, right? I'm going to make sure these kids that, they get to school and they don't have tennis shoes. I'm going to be at the house. We're going to make sure they get them. Or I'm going to have a job that I can leave so I can support them. And so I think for a lot of mothers, that the children, particularly as a young black man, we become, there is that idea of they live vicariously through us, right? They are looking at us and saying, well, if he can achieve, then I've been a part of that achievement. And that there's some weight to that, and that can be toxic. But then there's also some responsibility and blessing to that. That's the way I can feed back into my mother, by making her proud, by going out and achieving, by saying, Mom, yes, you sacrificed. You might not have done it, but boy, you put enough in me to go get it and go get more than you ever could ask or imagine. And by the way, come on, Mama, enjoy this experience. Sit at this table. Be a part of this. Have those things that maybe you might have sacrificed personally and couldn't get personally. Then I'm going to make up the difference. I'm going to make up the hedge. I'm going to make up the gap. And so for me, as a young black man, who am I to my mother? I'm her dream, right? I'm her I am her hope. I'm her inspiration, and I think she would agree with that. And that's something I don't take lightly. That is an incredible gift I'm able to give to my mom, to say, listen, maybe you made those sacrifices, but look what I'm the return on investment.
That's good. That's good. And just real quick on that point about you're being the fruit of that tree, being that dream. Like Brad said, you lost your mom, right? One of the things you can do for your parent, one of the greatest things you can do for your parents is know that when they die knowing that you're saved and that you're doing well. Your mother is gone. She can no longer speak for herself, but your mother has not died completely because she lives through you. Everything you do, because you are her child, everything you do represents her. Every decision you make, everything you create, you speak for her and you represent her. So take pride in that going forward, knowing that you are her legacy. And that's for anyone who has lost a parent, mother or father. Now we're asking about who are we to the women in our life as a sibling? I got 4 sisters. And to put it simply, who I am, I use one word, example. Now, women look to their dads to the kind of man that they want, right? But their brothers are the kind of man they have access to in real time. And for me, I hope to believe that I'm the example, for good or bad. Bad in the sense of, look, don't do this. Like, don't deal with this version of me. But good is like, this is the kind of man that you could be, that you deserve. So for me, I would say as a sibling, it would be an example. But Keith, as a father.
So for me, I'm a girl's dad. I have 3 adult girls, and so those roles have changed over time. Currently, where they are at life, I'm more of a consultant to them. Of course, when they were little, a nurturer and a provider. As they grew a little older and began to understand a little bit more, you become a role model, you become an educator or a teacher to them, but you also are a value setter. When they get a little older, I became the enforcer of those values and the cheerleader of those values. And then again, now when they're at this age, I'm a consultant, but not always. I've always been and always will be their protector. I will always be their covering. In other words, that there's never a day that goes by that I will not pray for my girls, over my girls, and with the thing that they become the best women that they could be. Me and Jeff was talking earlier with our kids, and this hit me many years ago, because I didn't have a dad and a mom, and did have some great people around me. I had to learn how to be a dad. And we had examples around that showed how to be a dad. But when I turned 18, I said, man, I'm going to take responsibility for myself. I'm going to forget all the bad things that I got. And well, not forget them, but learn from those things. But I need to learn some new behavior, some new habits, and some new things, because I didn't know in things. So I asked a whole bunch of questions. I went to a whole lot of people. I read a whole lot of things. I joined, matter of fact, the Fatherhood Initiative in things to learn some skills on what it meant to be a dad. And when we were talking earlier, my girls shouldn't have to go through the things that I went through. If I started out living in the projects, which most of us probably did at some point, come out living in the projects or a sharpshooter house and things. If I started out at this level and I attained this level, they should never have to go back to that level. They at least should start out where the level that I'm currently at. And I think that a lot of times that in black parenting, we have this narrative. If our kid fails at something, we want to teach them by making them go through the struggles. Well, man, we had to struggle, so they gonna struggle. We don't reset our kids. The other races reset their kids back to the level that they find themselves, and we have to be in a position that they will never have to go down there if I got anything to do with it. Now, sometimes, our kids have their own mind, their own wills, and they will decide to go that route, but you don't have to go that route. I want you to start here, and if you fall, I'm going to reset you to that level in things so that you can exceed everything that I've built. And I think this is how we build generational wealth. We don't have to keep reinventing. We learn the things that we learn at our level, put our kids at that level, help them to build above that level, and consult them to be better. I think everybody in here wants our kids to be better adults, better people than we ever were. So that's where my role is for the girls in my life currently.
And Jeff, who are you to the women in your life as a husband?
As a husband, like I said earlier, I grew up in a household where there was no example of a husband. My dad died when I was 9. So at that age, you really didn't understand, what the duties and what the role model was of a husband was at that time. But I like to relate to it as the 4 Ps. The first thing is, as a husband, being a protector. We should protect our wives. Your wife should not have no fear of anything outside the home or inside the home. I've had situations that happened in my house. I remember my boys like to laugh about it. We were asleep one night, give you an example, and just all of a sudden, the alarm just went off. Imagine you asleep. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and your alarm go off. And so they like to laugh about it because I tell you, trust me, when something happens, I'm the first one up. I'm the first one on the scene. And that's the way it should be. We got to make sure that we're protectors. I got up and I ran out that bedroom with my gun. Just imagine 3 o'clock in the morning. It's serious. Because if a joker comes in a family home at 3 o'clock in the morning, knowing the family is there and all those cars outside the home, it's serious. And so I'm serious. And so we have to be protectors. The next thing is we have to be the priest of our home, I believe. We have to make sure that we're praying when no one else is praying. One of the first things I do in the morning when I get up, I don't go work out, I don't go to work, I don't go to social media. My family will tell you, I'm the first one up praying, spending time before the Lord, making sure that I'm covering them, making sure that I'm covering myself, because we know that what Satan desires, he desires to sift all of us. He desires to destroy all of us. So we have to make sure that we're praying. We have to make sure that we're the priest of our home. So we have to make sure that we're the protector, that we're the priest. We also, men, we have to make sure that we're the provider. Now, being a provider means different aspects to different husbands. I'm a 100% guy. I don't believe in the 50-50 rule. That's just me. Now, it may be something different from you. I don't believe in splitting bills with my wife. I believe in paying 100. Now, guess what? I don't get off. I don't have an issue with anyone that believes different. That's just my belief as the provider, that I should be making sure that I take care of all the responsibilities in the home as a provider. And lastly, as a producer, it is my responsibility to make sure that I produce enough into my wife that she don't have to go to anyone else. Her life should be better as a married woman than it was as a single woman. That's what I believe. And so that's the 4 P's that I live by. As a producer, as a protector, as a priest, and as a provider.
So, guys, first off, I want to thank everybody that was on this panel and that came out tonight. And our empowerment group is called Iron Sharpens Iron, right? And tonight we have a discussion, some things we agreed upon, some things we disagreed upon. But if you ever rub 2 pieces of iron together, it's rigid. It's rigid. So when we disagree, or we get emotional, or we get angry, even when we do agree, it's that iron sharpening iron. Eventually, you keep rubbing the iron together, it's going to both get sharp. It's benefiting everybody. We want to have these conversations because, like they said, in the top of this conversation, there's a lot of narratives pushing out there that promote a lot of negativity, a lot of false narratives. So this is an opportunity for us to share something positive. Now, I'm not sure online how many shares we'll get because nobody's wearing a dress or doing anything stupid, but we do the work that we can do, right? And so having this conversation is a start. We want to have more conversations, more things. That we have in June, we have our picnic for our men's and boys picnic again in June. And if you know a young man that might be just needing support, needing some love, or just want to just hang out, bring them out. As men, we have to start showing up, right? To see guys taking their time to come out to something like this, that warms my heart, because a lot of times, I know we are busy, we are tired, but a lot of times we're just passive and dismissive. We have to be proactive. We can say what's wrong and what's right and what needs to be done, but what are we doing ourselves? So for me, like I said, responsibility, it's accountability. And so iron sharpens iron, brothers. I appreciate you guys' time, appreciate your time. Thank you guys. Thank you for everybody online for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.